So in this market that we find ourselves in, the homes that sell for in the quickest amount of time for the most amount of money are the ones that are move-in ready. Now, I'm not saying your home has to be brand new and a flip, but it has to be as nice as it possibly can. Hi, I'm Danny Brown. I'm the CEO of Myriad Real Estate Group, and this is going to be our August market update. The real estate market is actually pretty active right now. So last couple of videos we were talking about how inventory was increasing. Well, our seasonality has kind of kicked in and we're starting to see listing activity decrease. So the number of active homes on the market has actually gone down. So here in Greater Phoenix for Maricopa County, we are sub 19,000 homes on the market. So that is helping some sellers because the number of active homes or the supply is lowering. But we do see this pretty typically every single year when we get into our triple digits. We see a lot of the luxury market kind of shut down. They pull those homes from the market. And then we just see not as much activity taking place in those summer months. So that will typically last and carry us into the fall, and it really centers around school. So when I'm helping clients, there's always this misnomer that it's going to be super busy in the summer because kids are out of school and families want to get situated before school starts. If you have kids, you recognize that when kids aren't in school, it's really hard to get anything done during the day, right? Like you've got to find childcare, they're in summer camps, they're like doing all of these things. And so it is incredibly difficult to, one, prep your home to have it ready to list, and then two, go and see homes. If you've tried to tour properties when you've got kids, it is a very difficult prospect to do. So a lot of families will actually wait until the kids start school, and then we see an uptick in activity in the fall. So we start to see that increase in kind of September, October, and the first half of November. We'll see listing inventory pick back up. And then that will run until about Thanksgiving when we see the market kind of come to a crawl and really shut down in terms of new listings coming to market. There's a lot of older inventory during that time. That's actually the best window of time to be a buyer, but that's also when you have the least amount of choices. And that's just because of the holidays. Nobody really wants to list their home during the holidays. So mortgage rates have been extremely steady through all of the turbulence in the market, and that is thankful to the gap between where the 10-year Treasury and mortgage rates are. That has been narrowing over time, so all of the fluctuations that we've seen and the chaos in the geopolitics and whatnot that affect the 10-year has had very little impact on mortgage rates, which has been good because markets crave stability, and that's what gives buyers confidence to come back into the market, right? When they see mortgage rates bouncing up and down, that gives them fear and puts them on their heels and makes them think that it's not really a good time to enter the market. When we have stability, even with slightly higher rates, we start to see buyers get used to that. We're very adaptable creatures and we get used to our environment, so they get used to those rates and then they enter into the housing market. I do think that we are going to start to see a trend though where mortgage rates start to come down. I don't think they're going to cut rates in August, but they are signaling that there will be 2 rate cuts by the end of the year, with a lot of experts thinking that the first one will come in September. The federal government and the administration is also talking about bringing in, and we've talked about this before, a shadow Fed. So bringing in a new Fed chair ahead of Jerome Powell leaving. If they do that, I do think that you will see the 10-year come down further because that Fed chair will, kiss the ring, bend the knee, do what Trump wants, and that is cut rates. So come 2026, we will start to get into more of an environment where we see bigger rate cuts of the 10-year, and that'll absolutely have an indirect impact on mortgage rates, bringing them down. So if you are a buyer in this market, and we are seeing more buyers return to the market, which is good and refreshing, you need to be patient, for one. Just because somebody has had their home on the market for a long time does not mean that they are going to sell it for an aggressive price. Most sellers in this market are not hurting and are not in financial distress and don't have to sell. So if you're somebody that is looking to get a deal, they are absolutely out there and there is room to negotiate for sure. But most of these sellers are wanting to get something closer to their list price and then give concessions. That is very common right now, where a buyer can come in, if a home is listed at say 500, they're going to pay closer to that 500, but you can squeeze that seller for that 2 to 3% in concessions, as well as some additional to cover your buyer's agent's compensation. So you're looking at somewhere in total concessions, somewhere between probably 5 to 6%, covering almost all of your costs, which is actually really good. One of the first things to disappear when we start to shift into more of a seller's market or even a balanced market is those concessions start to vanish and get less and less. So if you can have your costs covered, keep more cash in your pocket, paying a little bit higher of a price, that really can pencil out and make a lot of sense. So if you're a seller, I've been having this conversation with a lot of my sellers. I call it the 3 Ps. It comes down to price, presentation, and patience. The homes that are presented well and priced accurately, and when I say presented well, I mean are nicely updated, clean, have good curb appeal, and just look good, those homes are still garnering a lot of attention and still selling quickly. A great example is I have a seller that when I met with them, their home had been a rental for quite some time, and it needed new carpeting upstairs, it needed fresh paint inside and out. They had Formica counters, so we came in and put in quartz. They didn't replace the cabinets, but they painted them, so they looked really nice, and they just gave the home a really good refresh. We priced the home slightly higher, and guess what? We sold and got a full price offer the first weekend with the concessions to help that buyer cover their closing costs, but the home moved. I've got other listings where they might be clean, but they're dated. Some of them aren't clean and need work. Those homes are taking a long time to sell, north of 3 months. And so there are buyers out there, but if your home needs work, is not presented well, you cannot price it high. You've actually got to price it pretty aggressively to get the market to notice and make a move on it. The number of buyers out there willing to spend a higher price, also cover all their concessions or their closing costs, and then need to come in to replace flooring, paint, do cabinets, all of these things, it really starts to add up and is a money crunch on those buyers. So if you are a seller and it's like, well, I don't want to upgrade it because what if the buyer doesn't like it? Upgrade it. Go very vanilla in the upgrades that you're doing that are going to apply to the masses. Even if it's just going from ratty old carpet to something that's more refreshed and newer carpet, do that, because it's going to increase the likelihood at which the home sells. It's going to sell for more money. It's going to take a lot less time to sell, and the buyers, even if they don't necessarily want that long term, their thought process is, I don't need to do this before moving in, so they can live with it for a while. So do those updates, make your home look as nice and attractive as you possibly can. You don't necessarily need to do a whole home remodel, but working with the right agent, they can come in and tell you where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, and it's really going to help you with that sales process. There's also a lot of rhetoric and things coming out where people are expecting, specifically to Phoenix, right? So this is isolated where home values might go down, and that's absolutely true. It all comes down to supply and demand. Rates have stayed stubbornly higher than what most people want, but I do think there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? We are going to get a new Fed chair. The Fed is going to start hopefully cutting rates by the end of this year. And so the wheels of change are coming, and we've seen it before that when our interest rates on mortgages get to around 6%, we see, I don't want to call it a deluge, but we definitely see a noticeable increase in buyer demand. When that buyer demand starts to come back, that is absolutely going to have a positive effect on home values. So timing markets is nearly impossible. So if you're somebody, a buyer that's been on the sideline and is waiting for home values to come down further, I would say get in and take advantage and make aggressive offers on homes, get your closing costs covered, because again, those things will vanish, and it's very easy to miss that shift in the market when you go from a buyer's market into a seller's market, it can happen pretty quickly. So if you're somebody that's just been on the sidelines waiting for that bottom, I don't know if we're there yet. We're still positive year over year. The other thing is making sure that if you're buying a home that you're going to be in it for at least 5 years. If you're somebody that's only going to be in a location for a year or two, it's probably honestly better and cheaper for you to rent, because I don't know that you'd be able to sell in a year or two to be able to cover the cost of selling. You might end up being upside down and have to cut a check. So that's a position you don't want to be in. And so if your timeline to be in a location is less than 5 years, I would encourage you to probably explore renting instead. But if you've got a longer horizon, then it's an absolutely super advantageous time for a buyer to enter this market, whether we're at the bottom or not. If you have any questions on the housing market here in Phoenix, definitely leave questions and comments below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you next month.